I am Joey Watson. I am an investigative journalist here at Listener, where I make long-form investigations and episodes.
This is Secrets We Keep Uncovered.
My job is to investigate things and to tell the story of what I find out when I do. I think there are two main things that drew me to investigative journalism: the ability to platform voices that wouldn't otherwise be platformed, holding truth to power. There is a role for journalism in holding institutions to account. Then the second part of journalism is that it's just a really, really awesome job. There's like creative elements of thinking, strategic elements of it. When you publish big stories that matter, particularly when it matters to victim communities or when it creates legislative change or stuff like that. I think journalism is basically built on interests, and I think there's no better way to reach for that than through formal training over time, because that's really the basis of all stories, is following your interests and seeing where those interests get you. At the heart of all the stories that I do, particularly intensive long form stories, is what we call victim-centered journalism. For a victim community or for people that are connected and directly affected, it becomes so important, both in terms of keeping you going and in terms of justifying it after it's published. You should always be wondering, am I doing this in the best way possible? Am I keeping the victim centered in this story? There's always this big tension when you're reporting on fire and extremism for, are you doing socially useful journalism versus are you platforming right-wing extremism? The most recent big series that I put out was called Secrets We Keep Lone Actor.
When this 28-year-old Australian terrorist live-streamed himself murdering 51 people in New Zealand, he was labelled as a lone actor.
I spent over a year retracing the trajectory of the Christchurch terrorist. He'd very much come to be seen as this kind of crazy guy that had acted alone. I got the sense that there was more that we weren't seeing in the narrative that we created around the attack. And I retraced his footsteps, and I found that there was a lot more going on in the parts of the world that he visited, where he was very, very close before the attack than we'd originally thought. The first step in developing a story, if you're starting from scratch in journalism, is to meet as many people as you can. The best weapon in a journalist's arsenal is 100% still your phone. And sometimes you need to have hundreds of conversations before you realize what a story is. But sitting down with people is truly, especially at the beginning, 100% the first step that I think any journalist or aspiring journalist should take. One of the first series I did at Listener was called Secrets We Keep Nest of Traitors. It was a chronicle of my multi-year hunt to try and find the Cold War spy who had betrayed Australia. The first step for that one was that I got to know a lot of spies in that period, retired spies particularly. And in speaking to them, they'd tell me that a lot of their work during the Cold War had been sabotaged because one of their colleagues was actually working for Russia, but that the organization had never revealed who that was. So that's, I suppose, the first step in gathering the story. But in terms of making it, it's that thing of just finding people that might be connected to the story in any way whatsoever and asking a million questions and trying to get in front of as many people as possible. For example, during the Christchurch one, I developed lots of contacts within the national security and also the de-radicalization space. Very recently, I did a 2-part series on a family in Melbourne who had approached the Australian Federal Police for help with their son who was showing signs of radicalization towards an extremist ideology. And when they'd approached police, instead of helping the son, they actually radicalized the son further into those ideologies before arresting him on his 14th birthday. I had learned from someone who had worked closely with the parents that they were ready and looking for a way to tell their story about what had happened.
It was the AFP that was radicalising the child. We're
lucky in Australia that we have an imperfect but an existing freedom of information system. So anyone in Australia, you don't have to be a journalist, can apply to have documents released by a government agency, it's still worthwhile thinking about what agencies might have had something to do with any story that you do and putting in those applications, because you never know what you might get back. Court documents are a really useful tool if the story you're doing involves court. Otherwise, there's the old leaked back of the truck situation. And when that happens, it's just important to make sure that however your source asks the documents to be treated, you follow their guidelines and respect them. So once you've got all the material, I've done all the interviews, I've got all the documents, the journey of making a podcast starts with getting into a room with your team and a lot of post-it notes, and then trying to start to work out how we make complicated stories flow in interesting ways that both make sense and are also compelling and have forward propulsion. And then once we do that, we'll go away, we'll start writing drafts. I like to see the tape as a piece of marble, and so tape being all your recorded interviews and all your field sound and everything like that. And once I've worked out my arc, I'll put all of my tape that's relevant to my story arc at different points with different characters into a big document. And then I'll start chipping the story away from the tape. And then slowly, as you kind of go through the process of doing that, you start to see what the story looks like. And then after that, it will go to sound design. What drew me to audio is that it's a really cool way to create a kind of intimate relationship with your listener. So we've got really awesome sound designers here at Listener that do amazing work, and they're sort of like the director. They have the ability to set the tone and the feel through music and sound, setting the resonance of the voices, making sure that they sound the best quality, and so creating a nice experience for the listener. Adding in sound effects at different points in time, which can kind of complement the story. Putting in music, which is such an important part of long-form narrative documentary storytelling. I mean, sound design is also a collaborative process. Like we'll say this is the sort of vibe that we wanted to go for this part. For Nest of Traders, we had a theme song written in-house here at Listener, which was a sort of kind of James Bondy meets Cold War, very vague, complicated pitch, and they just absolutely nailed it. And the effect of that, I think, is carried throughout the whole series. Once the script is done, it goes to a fact checker, and the fact checker will go line by line, and everything that's basically a statement that can be fact checked, they will fact check. The process of fact checking is that it's like a safeguard before publication. So it's basically you've gone through your whole process. These are the things that are going to go out into the world. Your script is hopefully a beautiful narrative story, but it's also a series of allegations and facts, and as much as possible, you want to make sure that every single thing that you're saying there is correct. Podcast publicity is a bit of a dark art. For me, a big part of the process, especially when I've spent a long time thinking about and researching something, is doing interviews on other podcasts. And then I get to talk about the ideas. I get to be challenged about the ideas. I get to get the word out about what I've uncovered. I get to talk about bits of the process that didn't exist in the podcast. You have no idea where your listener is going to find you, so you need to give them as many opportunities as they can to be able to. My advice for the first step for anyone who wants to be a journalist is follow and cultivate and deepen your interests. If you have an area of really anything that you're interested in, follow and cultivate those interests, and they will become the basis for the stories that you find, and the stories that you find are the basis for your journalism. Every story I tell starts with curiosity, asking questions and taking that first step. If you're thinking about your own next step with online study, Open Universities Australia can help you explore thousands of courses from Australia's leading universities, all in one place. Your journey into uni starts with Open Universities Australia.